Okay.
Hello, good evening. This is me. Yeah, Mr. Carr, I'm live. Good evening. Today I'm here. I'm your host, Rabah Fatma, with the Power Minutes. And today's guest is Mr. Carl Grant, and he is the Chief Executive Officer of Connexa Partners, where he has spent the last years scaling success and working with top client. So today we will explore about his experience and we will know more about it. So welcome, Mr. Carlgren. How are you? So Mr.
How you doing?
Carlgren, how are you?
Doing great. You're breaking up just a little
That's
bit,
good.
so I'll do my best.
So Mr. Carl, I would like to ask about your personal journey and career growth. So what inspired you to start your journey in business development?
Okay, are we back?
Yeah, I was asking about that. What inspired you to start your journey in business development?
Bob? Well, it's actually not something I ever really thought about doing. I got a phone call from PricewaterhouseCoopers after working at development for 2 really made a name for myself in uh, doubling the number of venture capital firms. Accounting firms merged together. They called me and recruited me to come over to be their very first business development hire. And it sounded like a good opportunity.
So, Mr. Carl, can you tell me that how did your 20 years at Coley LLP shape your leadership style?
Rebab, you froze there. What you said? How did you what?
I'm asking that how did your 20 year at Coley LLP shape your leadership style?
Oh, well. So when I started out there, I didn't start out leading the business development team. I started out actually in a marketing position because I didn't have anywhere else to put me. And so over the course of developing in that role and then creating a business development function at the firm, I realized that my strengths were in business development and in leading others to do excellent business development. And so as I built the team over the years that I was there, I built it into a 17-person team, and I really became more of a player coach. I wasn't a micromanager. I hired very capable people, and I helped point them in the right direction, and then I let them do what I hired them to do, and I was there for them when they needed me. And so, if you were looking for somebody to hold your hand and micromanage you, perhaps that wasn't the right management style for you. But most of my people weren't like that. Most of my people were very mature, capable, experienced people who just did an excellent job. And all I was there to do was to make sure that the partners that they were supporting and were aligned with the efforts that they were putting into their jobs. And so I was there to make sure they got properly rewarded for the work that they did, and we're happy. And I retained most of my people for all of those years. I had people with me for 19 years there. It was fabulous.
So if I talk about your leadership and CEO insights, so how do you manage high stakes decision under pressure?
Well, I'm a person of faith, and so I pray about big decisions and I seek God's guidance as to what I should do. So I don't really feel a lot of pressure. I trust in the Lord, and He guides my steps.
So what was your biggest challenge in your journey?
It it has the potential to disrupt your life. So I left my full time job of 20 years and set out on my own to start a company and a consulting company, and that has its challenges because in my old job I would do the business development work, and then the actual client service work I handed off to partners. But as I transitioned out to where I was selling the work and then also doing the work, that was a challenge because contracts end and contracts begin. And so having to constantly develop business and then also serve that business is a challenge. Whereas when you're in a large organization, like PricewaterhouseCoopers has 165,000 employees, Cooley had, thousands of employees. And so when I would sell a new client to come on, I always had somebody to hand it off to. When you're on your own, you don't really have that. So, there's a few instances where I had contractors and people to push work to, but for the most part, I'm doing the work.
So can you please tell me what is the important thing between the build the relation between clients and the business?
The the most important thing between the clients and the business. What, explain?
Yes.
I don't think I understood your question 100%.
I'm
Well,
just
look, I
asking
think
about
that
that
as you're
how
serving a client, you have to be making sure that you're.
yeah, yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
same question I'm asking that how can we build a relation between clients and the business?
Yeah, I think it's very important that when you have a client, you're always looking out for that client's needs, how you can meet his or her needs, and be thinking about serving them. And so rather than, thinking about it being just a business for yourself, think about their business as being your business and how you can build their business and affect their business. So you always have to be thinking about the other person and thinking about how you can bring value to that other person. And I think then you have happy clients, and you have clients that want to come back to you and do more work with you.
So as a CEO, this is the big responsibility. So how do you manage stress in high responsibility roles?
Um, I think you always need to be thinking about you're talking about hiring people. Um, you only want to bring the best people on to service your clients, and so you have to really think about the folks that you're associating you're with because they are your brand. And so in some I make sure that somebody I would hire, essentially trusting your brand to that person that you're bringing on board. And so I only bring on people that I feel 100% confident in.
All right. If I talk about the young professionals, so what's the number one skill young people should learn? What do you think?
I think young people need to think about, you know, so many of them are focused on themselves and their career and what will benefit them. And I think young people need to think about how to benefit the person that they're trying to work for. For example, when my children were coming up and going to college, rather than having them go out and seek paid internships, I encouraged them to go and find a place where they could add value and volunteer to work. All right. So I have a son who's in college, and he'll be working at a paid job some days a week, and then he has an intern, and he's going to be doing that for experience. And so he's going to be essentially working two jobs all summer. And so I think young people need to really think about it, that it's a competitive world, and you need to think about it very competitively, right? And so it's nice to make money, but making money does not equate with getting experience. And so I have also counseled other young people that while they might have a paid job, they can also go and advise other companies and help them with their businesses to try to be of value, to try to build their network and then become part of the type of industry that they want to be in. For example, there's a one young gentleman who I mentored recently who has a paid job, and he was thinking about leaving his job because he wanted to get experience to try to become a venture capitalist. Venture capitalist is the hardest thing in the world to become. And I gave him ideas of things he could do to start to build his value and become valuable as a potential future venture capitalist. And it wasn't leaving his day job, but it was taking on advisory roles and helping other companies where he can make them successful and then also become associated with these companies and get to know venture capitalists in the process. And so I think it's going above and beyond is what young people need to do.
One more thing I want to know, that what keeps you motivated, after all these years? So what's your motivation?
You know what? I wake up motivated every day. I have a family to provide for. I have a God that I serve, and He places certain callings on my life, and so it's just not work that I do for the sake of doing work and earning money. The work I do has a calling to it. If you understand what that means, and so I have a certain calling to the Middle East right now. I'm talking to you. I have lots of friends in the Middle East now, and it's an interesting calling because yes, I'm doing business in the Middle East, but I'm also building bridges, very important bridges to the Middle East, and I'm becoming a bridge between the East and the West. And I feel like that's a calling in my life because, um, you know, for so many years of my life, I think the Westerners have looked at people who live in the East, Christianity versus Islam, and we think, oh, you're different, we're just different. And rather than trying to build bridges between these two different cultures and figure out what we share in common, people just look at each other funny, like, oh, you dress differently than me, and you celebrate different holidays than me, and you read a different book than me, and you attend a different religious institution than me, and you're just different. I'm not going to talk to you. Well, I'm breaking all of that down. I have made some of the best friends of mine in the Middle East. You're in Pakistan. I've made some amazing friends in Pakistan, and I've started a ministry called Bridges of Faith, and it's an interfaith ministry where I have Christians and Muslims. We come on every couple of weeks and we study together, we pray together, we learn together. We don't argue with each other, we don't hate on each other, we don't try to convert each other. We try to just lovingly learn from each other and try to understand each other. And it's false people who want to do business together, who are getting to know each other, and no topics are taboo. So in 2 weeks on April 20th, I don't know if you know what holiday that is, but for half of the world, it's Easter. And so I asked my Muslim friends on our last call, which was yesterday, I said, okay, guys and gals, do you want to meet on April 20th on Easter, or do you want to wait a week? Because I asked them, do you want to meet during Ramadan or Eid? And they said, no, we don't want to, because, and, nobody's going to want to get on a call when everybody's thinking about eating. And so we didn't meet for a whole month. And so Easter's coming out, and it's a day that Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, or Isa. And Muslims and Christians both believe in Isa, or Jesus, but we have different ideas about what the significance of his life was here on earth. And so rather than like shying away from the fact that Christians believe that he died, was buried, and he rose again before ascending. Both believe coming to believe that, but Christians believe that he died, was buried, and he rose again, overcoming sin, death, and the grave. And we're going to study that. And I have verses from the Old Testament, from the Quran, and the New Testament, and we believe some different things. And we're not going to hate on each other. We're not going to argue with each other. We're not going to be mean to each other. We're going to lovingly talk about what we believe. This is how we see it, and this is how you see it. And let's talk about these differences and try to understand each other. And we'll close in prayer, and we'll leave as friends. And that's what we do, rather than creating wars or like things that people do, or like looking at each other funny. We're just talking about these things head on. And we've done it for 8 months now. And we've talked about prophets we hold in common, angels we hold in common, even prophets we don't hold in common. I mean, we've talked about it all. And you know what? I'm developing some really good friends on these calls because we're just being honest with each other. And it's really, really cool. And so that's what gets me going every day is the calling on my life, not just making money. Anybody can go out and make money and do like worthless things, but I'm developing friendships rooted in truth and mutual understanding.
Really great. Uh, I am a part of artificial intelligence school, so here I would like to ask about that. What's your view on AI's impact on business development?
It's very interesting because I don't think AI is ever going to develop human relationships. And I think business development is all based on human relationships. And so I use a tool. You can develop a lot of market intelligence using AI. You can craft messaging and come up with angles. But if you just use AI and try to substitute it for your emotional intelligence, it doesn't work, right? So human beings have certain human connections that they make. And I may be able to find a need for something that I'm doing using AI for something that you're doing, but if I can't, as a human being, connect with you and develop a relationship with you and show value to you, you're not going to want to buy from me. So I think it's important. And I think if you, just like social media, right? So you can be old school or like email. Email's old. It's been around for, what is like 30 some odd years, right? But I remember when email came out, and there were old school people that said, I don't do email, right? And then there were people who came out, when social media came out, they said, I don't do social media, and I thinking to myself, if you don't do email and you don't do social media, you're going to become a dinosaur. And I say the same thing about AI. People who say, oh, I don't do AI, it's evil. I'm like, well, actually, it could do some good. And so when I'm, for example, when I'm developing my Bridges of Faith studies, I need to do 1 hour of study between the Christians and the Muslims. And I need to find weeks reading the books and trying to find the exact right verses to talk about. Or I could use AI and say, this is the topic we're talking about. And I want you to find the most relevant verses in the Quran, the Hadiths, the Old Testament, the New Testament. And we're going to be talking about this. And here's the ground rules. We want to be respectful. We want to, do this in love. And it will come up with an outline for me that it would take me it takes me 5 minutes to do the outline, whereas it would have taken me weeks and weeks to do it. So that's the power of AI. And you can do that with email, you can do that with proposals. But if you just submit an AI generated email or proposal, nowadays people are smart and they will say, just these proposals, and I put the human element into it, right? Because if I'm talking to you and I've gotten to know you, I'm going to say, Rubab, it was great talking to you on your podcast. I enjoyed talking to you about these topics, right? Like AI doesn't know that we had this conversation. AI doesn't know that. AI is going to give you a generic, plain vanilla message, and you're going to be like, that's AI. But if I say, I really enjoyed talking to you about this, that, and the other thing that we just discussed on this podcast, you're going to human chemical intelligence. It just doesn't work.
So, what do you think, Carl? What's the most important KPIs for business growth today?
So that's an interesting topic. To a company to do business development, it's a little different than sales. So sales is very quantifiable, right? You might be somebody who just picks up the phone and calls people or sends emails, and it's very quantifiable. It's transactional, right? Sales is transactional. This is development. So when you're embarking upon a business development strategy, you need to know that you're laying the groundwork for future growth. Now that may seem soft and squishy, but I know this works because I've done this. I've gone into companies where I started out with nothing, and then I built very strategic relationships that generated tens of millions of dollars over time. And so you need to think about, do you want to have a transactional sales model, which is going to, it's very binary. You either have wins or losses, and the losses are lost forever. Those are not relationships, right? Those are not lifelong relationships. When you're doing business development, you're developing relationships to develop not a near-term transaction, but a lifetime of business. And typically those relationships take longer to cultivate. And when they actually manifest, they manifest much larger than these sales transactions. And so you need to think about short-term sales or is it long-term business growth, and think about how much you want to allocate towards both, because both are needed.
So, Mr. Carl, what's the biggest advice you would like to give the next generation or the youngers or the child who are, working on leadership skills? So, what it would be?
So the advice I'm gonna give them is the advice I gave in the book that I wrote, How to Live the Abundant Life. And so the abundant life isn't necessarily a life of financial riches. It's a life of fulfillment. And so I encourage people in my book to do things that go contrary to human nature. Okay, so human nature says, I want to be first. And so to be first, I'm going to step on people and I'm going to elevate myself and I'm going to get ahead of them, right? And that can work to a point, but if you want long-term relationships where those people want to see you succeed, it doesn't work that way. In fact, Jesus was quoted in the Bible as saying, "He who wishes to be first must be last and servant of all." Okay? And I think Muslims and Christians both believe in the teachings of Jesus, right? Or Isa. And so if you want to be first, you must be last and servant of all. So young people, think about what that looks like. That means if you want to be first, you're going to serve others. So when you're leading other people, are you like lording it over them? No, you're serving their needs, right? I think about when I served in the military. I was an officer in the military, and in the military, when it was time to eat, the officer who was in charge made sure all of his soldiers ate first. And I, as the officer, only ate if there was food left. And so I'm putting the needs of my soldiers above my own needs. You follow that? That's last and servants of all. And so when you're leading a group, you make sure your group's needs are met. You make sure your team members are getting paid, that they're getting the support they need to be successful, right? If you're working for an employer, rather than just thinking about that employer as a paycheck, think about how you can serve your employer's needs. If you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife, same thing, right? If I come home to my wife and I'm like, all right, put my food on the table. I'm ready to eat. Now do this for me. Do that for me. Am I serving her needs? Am I last and servant of all? No, I'm not. I'm asking her to serve my needs rather than me serve her needs. And so I find that if I serve my employees' needs and my employer's needs above my own needs, they want to see me to do well as well. And so young people, I know that goes against human nature, but I encourage you to do the things that don't come natural, right? It's natural for me to want to stay in bed every day and eat junk food. But if I stayed in bed and I get myself out of bed and I exercise most days, I take a couple of rest days, but by doing things that come unnatural to me, like getting up and doing exercise isn't natural. I don't want to do it, but I do it because the payoff is there. Okay. And the payoff is there if you do a whole host of things. I don't want to go through every little section in my book, but I outline every section of your life, from your health and your fitness, your nutrition, to your work, to your relationships, all of it. Do what doesn't have any questions about any of this. I encourage you to read my book. There's a Kindle version that you can get in Pakistan, and it's relatively cheap. And so encourage you to read it, and then shoot me a message on social media and let's talk about it. I'm talking to a gentleman today who read my book, and he's recommending it to all the young people that he mentors, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm talking to him today to see how I can help him, do a better job at what he's doing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carl, for your precious time and sharing your thoughts and your experience. I'm really highly thankful to you, and I would like to say thanks for your everything you share. So, all my viewers, I hope so it will be more effective and beneficial for all of you for the advice Mr. Carl gave us. So we will connect another guest in the next episode. So now I would like to say bye bye and thank you so much, Mr. Guardian. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye bye
Thank
from
you so
Pakistan.
much. And by the way, the Rehan school that you work for, I love Rehan. So he's under mine, and I think the world of him. So take care. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.